So I joined the job.
Lured, hook, line, sinker. Got him. But apparently
Yeah,
it paid off, obviously.
it paid off. I was the first employee, or technically the second employee. And then I became a VP of sales 6 months later at the age of 26.
Good for you.
Yeah, and that was my first like successful company that I worked at.
Mhm.
Otherwise, everything prior to that, from 25, from the ages of 22 to 24, 25, I was a loser.
Hello and welcome to KJ's Corner. I believe this will be episode 3 in the series as we're recording right now. We just launched one of the series, and full transparency, we're front loading these. I am KJ. It's for Kyle John Fenton, but I am not pretentious, so I go by my name KJ. And with me, I have...
I'm going to call him a good friend now, even though we've been cutting it up for the past 5 minutes, and we're talking about babies
and talking about life and so on and so forth. I have with me Moore. He is actually the founder of From Demo to Close. That is his business. We're going to talk a lot about that today and talk about his story. But first and foremost, Moore, how are you, man? How are things? I know I asked you before, but for everyone else.
Yeah. For everyone else, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Are you excited? It's Friday.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably take the weekend off to do no work. For me, I mean, my week I don't work on Fridays or Friday nights or Saturdays,
Sure.
but I try to Saturday nights maybe sneak in an hour of work, maybe Sundays. So yeah.
Sure. Awesome. Any big plans for the night at all that you're willing to share, or just kind of hanging out with the fam?
Yeah, just go to my in-laws. I'll be with my in-laws.
Cool.
I'm Jewish, so I keep the Sabbath. So every Friday and Saturday, I don't. It's like imagine doing Thanksgiving every week.
What I want to talk about today is your story. As you know, if you're tuning in for the first time, the whole point of this podcast is to find really prominent professionals in the technology space that whether you're in the sales capacity, pre-sales capacity, post-sales capacity, whatever it is, and to hear their story. I think it's more beneficial to hear a path from someone's specific lens versus what you see on paper, because I think there's nuggets and gems that you can't necessarily suss out from really anything on paper, although you do a pretty kick-ass job, if I'm being completely honest with you, on your LinkedIn. If you're looking for a reference point, find more on LinkedIn, see his LinkedIn profile. It is loaded with a bunch of stuff. As of now, as we had mentioned,
you are the founder of From Demo to Close. Can you share with
everyone what that is and what purpose in the market you are serving?
Yeah, I always struggle with getting a very clear, concise answer because of my brain.
We got time, man.
Different direction. From Demo to Close is a. Let me know if the sound comes off weird. It's a B2B SaaS coaching, consulting, advisory company, which means, in a nutshell, there are two parts of the business. If you're an account executive and you're trying to close more deals and you want someone to coach you alongside, and so we have the university, which is like a group coaching program with course content and a community. If you are a B2B SaaS startup company and you need advisory or consulting, building playbooks, coaching the sales team, etc., then you have the FTTC consulting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very focused on B2B SaaS. That's
cool.
That's awesome. My background is. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it's funny that you bring up background, because now that we know that, we're going to bring you all the way back. I'm going to read something from your about on your profile. You tell me if you want to add more color here, but it's what you started with is Monday morning, 11 a.m. You went to your boss and said, "I'm sorry, this job sales is not for me," which I find very interesting because now you have a coaching business for B2B sales. And that was 13 years ago. So you were 22 years old at that time. What you did is you kind of avoided sales, but now you are a 3X VP of sales for early stage SaaS startups. You obviously have your own business here and so on and so forth. So I want to take you back to 22 years old and really kind of go through your experiences. You have a ton of different roles. So I feel like for the sake of time and our all intents and purposes, we can't do that. But it looks like your first job was a copywriter intern at Zimmerman Advertising. Was that your first gig that you had outside of the sales role that you had dropped? And was that the first one that you took, or was it more something else that was later? No? Okay.
Yeah. If we're talking about, are we talking in college or post college?
I would actually, whatever I would say led you to
either that turning point in your life where you had avoided sales at first? Because I think it'll be really interesting to see how you started morphing back, because you started becoming a business development advisor, a marketing advisor, and then eventually you rolled back in. So I guess whatever job that you want to discuss there. Yeah.
I mean, I did retail sales in college, and then I became an intern. I wanted to be in copywriting. That's what I really wanted to do. I loved the show Mad Men. I loved everything about advertising back in the day, what it was.
Sure.
But then went to college, and marketing and advertising became more digital, and SEO sort of took over. This was around 2008, whatever you want to call it, around that time, 2009. And I was like, I'm not interested in doing that. I wanted to do old school billboards. And so, long story short, I graduated a marketing degree, but then my first real job was that job that I quit on the first day. And then from there, I ended up what I ended up doing, I think I just sort of job hopped. I ended up getting a job as a waiter. And then I don't have this on my resume anywhere, but it wasn't I was hustling.
See, these are the nuggets though. Okay, cool. So it's not there. All right. So you were
kind of living, you were living like an artist lifestyle to some degree, right?
I was living at my parents' house, so I had no expenses. But I definitely wasn't in a happy place. I was I graduated college. All my friends are in New York and in college there and having fun and meeting people, and I'm just here in Miami, wasting my time. So I got a job as a waiter, and then I found a random job on Craigslist, and the job was it was a company that wrote, when you call certain businesses, and then you're put on hold, and then you have the on hold music, and then there's somebody an automated person saying well, while you're waiting, blah 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 is a great on hold messaging. The job was to write on hold messages for
no way. I didn't. Okay, I thought that was just a random person that just writes something. That's a job. I did not know that.
Companies do that. Yeah, there's a whole company set up that way.
Interesting. Okay, so that was your first. So it's kind of
that was it was a copyright. It was copywriting. Yeah, it was. It was that. It was that. That was the side job of it's my side hustle while I was also being a waiter, which it was sort of interesting, right? They would pay me $20 per on hold message sheet. It was cool. You call truck companies, or you call local small business, whatever it is. And
so they solicited a bunch of businesses that they said, hey, we want some on hold messaging, and you were the one who was providing it.
I was writing the copy for that. Yeah.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So what eventually led you to landing, I would say probably
call it business development to Keller Williams, because that's probably where all of this would have started. Or the marketing manager at
Forest Travel, I guess. Which one of those?
So the marketing manager role. So Forest Travel is a luxury travel agency.
Okay.
And I don't remember the exact things that led to it, but I definitely didn't want to continue being a waiter and
sure.
Things.
Yes.
I wanted more of a big boy job. Yep. And I found Forest Travel. I don't remember, maybe Indeed or one of those websites. Sure. And they happened to be local, so I went in for an interview. They needed a marketing manager for Forest Travel. Had a bunch of sister companies that are all luxury jet vacations, luxury cruises, luxury this. And so I got the job. I joined that company to do what was it? It was writing some copy on the emails, the emails that they send out, writing some copy on the website. Pretty regular, nothing creative. It was nothing creative. It was nothing special, but it was a stable job. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to get into real estate, and I didn't know at the time if I wanted to get into real estate, because that's what you do when you're in Miami, and real estate sounds sexy, and real estate has
culturally
money.
All right,
So I wanted to get into real estate. This was all happening after I quit my job.
No, this is good context. Yeah, because it's going to lead us to it. Yeah.
So my job that I quit was the first job that I applied to after college. The marketing job and all these other jobs happened after.
Okay.
So what happened was I graduated college. I'll never forget the day. I was applying on Craigslist to different companies, and I'm driving to my friend's house who threw a party, and my friends from high school were still in Miami, and they were about to, or college were still in Miami. They were about to go back to college, and so she threw a party. I'm on the causeway driving. I check my email, and then I see that I got accepted to this job interview. So I go in. It was sort of like a living social, but not right. You're calling restaurants, but sort of the same idea.
I'm with you.
And I went into the job interview, and the CEO at the time, it was a really good vibe. It was the whole office location had this startup-y vibe. It was really cool. The CEO was really nice. The team was really nice. And they said, we interviewed somebody else, but we really like you, and we're going to offer them a job, but I think we're just going to offer you the job if you're interested. I said, yeah, I'm down to do that.
Cool. Good on you.
I knew what the job was. I knew it was sales, but I think my body went on autopilot, like while doing the interview. For me, it was just like, can I get it? I wasn't even thinking like what's going to be like what's going to be like day one. Long story, he's like, all right, start Monday. We'll order you business cards. I show up Monday morning. It was like the hours were like 10 to 7. I start at 10. I go in. Good vibes again. He introduces me to my team or my colleagues, my laptop and my computer he gave me. He's like, all right, like, the job was to like cold call, make a list of restaurants and cold call.
Yep.
I just freaked out. I was like, and he went back to he's like, let me know if you need anything. I looked at my computer. The first thing I did was I opened up my Hotmail at the time, and I just started going through
Hotmail.
like my spam messages and like archiving spam. I was just trying to kill time. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I felt this like crazy anxiety, almost like not a panic attack, but just like really intense anxiety and like judgment. Like I felt like everyone was staring at me. No one was staring at me. And like the movies, like I went into the bathroom, washed my face. I looked in the mirror. I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
What's happening? Yeah.
I went into his office and I'm like, I'm sorry, this isn't for me. Sales isn't for me.
Wow.
And
okay.
His face, he just looked at me. He's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, sorry. And I just like left. It was like really awkward. And then I just drove home. And like as I was driving home, it started raining in Miami. It was like really.
Oh wow. Okay.
dramatic.
So just like when it rains at port, yeah, it's one of those cliche things, but okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
My dad wanted to kill me when I got home. He's like, how was your first day at work? I'm like, I quit. He freaked his shit.
Well, of course he did, because it was just like, oh man, like now what's he gonna do? Like I get it, and now as a parent myself, I can only imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
But I feel like you probably had some support, right? Like I feel like they didn't kick you out or anything, right?
No, yeah. I mean, I had like I can live in the apartment, but my dad's like, you like, yeah, they weren't gonna kick me out, but like my dad would say something like, if you don't get a job, because I was waking up at the time at like noon, 1 o'clock, just bumming around.
Yeah.
So my dad's like, get your ass up, get out of the house. I don't want to see you throughout the house. Like you better not be here when I come over. And so I would just like walk around during the day, just killing time. I wouldn't like do anything. I was very scared. I was very timid, very anxious.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was before I joined as a marketing manager.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We can obviously, and I.
Yeah, I'm jumping around.
No, but it's good, because I think it's showing, like, honestly, and I'm kind of summarizing this a bit, is like it's showing like in that moment you were frazzled, like you didn't necessarily have a clear direction, you didn't have a vision, and even as we're kind of talking through it right now, like you're even putting yourself back in that mindset, and to me, it's
it was sort of depressing. Honestly, it was very depressing.
That's what I'm saying, and like I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's good that we're reflecting on it, but I think
it's good that we're reflecting on it.
But right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is I think it's really awesome that other people could see this. Like, oh, I might be struggling with the same thing, even. People, like, eventually you figure it out, and I'm saying, like, be patient, focus your time, dedicate your time, and so on and so forth, which I would say, if we want to segue, because that was actually really awesome context, let's get to, honestly, when you started becoming an actual like business development advisor and a marketing advisor, to eventually, I think that led you going back into being an account executive. You want to give us a kind of a run through as to how, like, because that started to give you your direction, I would argue, right? So what happened there?
So I'll just give some context before the segue. Like, emotionally, I just felt like I had potential, but I was very clogged. Something was clogging my brain. Something. Maybe maybe it was it was probably lack of self-confidence.
Sure.
And I had nothing to show for it, so I felt like I had no skills. So that's why I probably was all depressed. But then, after marketing manager, I found a position where I could be in marketing and real estate, which was a perfect world. It's not on LinkedIn or on my resume. It was to work at a real estate investment firm, and it was like the perfect role that I thought it would be. I joined in. It was very sketchy. They were doing wholesaling, but they were being very sketchy about it. Wholesaling means you're flipping contracts. You're not really flipping houses.
Right.
And I had intense anxiety there. The owner of the company, I remember the first or second day on the job, they gave me a task, which was they had a property investment that they wanted to blast out to their investors. They had a list of hundreds of investors. And I'm like, all right. And I sent out the email, and all of a sudden I hear the owner of the company yell from his office, like top of the line, no, and cursing. I'm like, because I was like very anxious already, and I was like lack of self.
Didn't you do exactly what
I thought
you would do? Like, hold on, wait a minute, what?
I believe like everything that goes, it's all about me, right? Like that's when you have such an ego, when things go wrong, you think it's your fault. Like
Sure,
when things go right, you think people are thinking about you. And so my brain went into like, oh man, it was me. But I had a sense of intuition, and so I just hear him talking to the guy that hired me that I was close with. Yeah, he's like, "Why did you do? You gotta get fired." Blah, blah. I'm like, I think they're talking about me. I'm not sure. Like it happened within a second. He comes
Like
to me.
it was the timing of it. And was he on the
Yeah.
email? Was he
And what
BCC, I assume, or something?
Everyone was CC, not BCC.
Got it. Oh, so it's definitely gonna. Okay, got it.
So the investors weren't supposed to see the other investors. It's a problem. And
okay, yeah.
it was
That's a coaching moment, but all right.
It was a pretty bad score. His reaction was just like threw me off, and he came to me in front of all the employees and he just yelled in my face, and I just felt like a puppy. I'm like, and that just knocked me out. Like I stayed in the company for maybe a couple more months, but
Sure.
every day was high anxiety. I didn't smoke cigarettes at the time. I never smoked cigarettes. I mean, I don't touch cigarettes anymore.
Sure.
But I was so high, like stressed out that my friend had a cigarette. I would smoke cigarettes because I was just anxious. I had anxiety.
Well, I mean, it's
job.
gonna take the edge off. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was becoming very unhealthy. So I quit that job, and then I got into. Eventually, I found myself in Keller Williams joining full time as a real estate agent.
Mhm.
It says business advisor. It's a real estate agent. And Keller Williams, the reason why I chose that brokerage is because they're very gung ho on like training. They have like mentorship and training and cold calling, and they have like workshops. I was like, this is what I need. I need a coach. I need a mentor. I didn't have one. And so I felt like that's what I always felt like I needed. So I joined. They told us that we should be cold calling every single day from like 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. and then we should be door knocking every day. Now I was like all for, but like this was like a couple of first weeks into the brokerage, and during a workshop, I met someone who was there that I recognized. They were like mutual friend of a brother of a mutual friend, whatever. Long story short, I went up to him. I'm like, oh, by the way, I know your sister. And he's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm friends with you. Oh, how are you? Blah, blah. Oh, so you just became a real estate, schmoozing. And then he's like, and I'm like, what did you think about this? He's like, yeah, I would like to cold call, but like, I don't want to cold call alone. I'm like, yeah, me neither. And I'm like, I don't want to door knock alone. He's like, me neither. I'm like, do you want to like partner up?
Tag team it, which you see, I still see that today. I live in a cookie cutter community. You still get the door-to-door stuff. Yep, it's the same concept. Yep.
He's like, yeah, let's do it. And so when you're scared, it's a lot easier to be nervous and scared with someone else that isn't the same boat.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we did exactly what they told us. We paid for a list of leads for homeowners. We set up shop in his like conference room in his building, and we took our cell phones and we just started cold call. We had scripts and we started cold call. We didn't know what we were doing, but we felt comfortable doing it together. So when we would cold call, it wasn't like two people cold calling. I would cold call and he would listen. When he would cold call, I would listen because we were just too scared.
Oh, so it was like almost like a real-time feedback mechanism.
Sort of, yeah, but we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Well, yeah, sure, but it was just like, okay, that was good. Like more like a hype man, but
yeah, it's exactly what it was. It was a hype man. You got this, blah blah. Yeah, it was like Wolf of Wall Street, like
of course.
That. Yep. And then we were door knocking every day, and then so we're doing this together. So you have someone to lean on. Mm-hmm. And then when we're at a certain point during door knocking or cold calling, he was a lot more timid than I was, and I noticed that my confidence grew, and at one point we were knocking on a door. And it was like in the area called Golden Beach, which is a very exclusive, high-end, multi-million-dollar home area.
Let me look it up while we're talking about it. Yep.
Grant Cardone lives there. Real estate developers live there. Big people live there.
Yep.
So we're not door knocking there, and we had to get a solicitation permit in order to knock there. Otherwise,
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's definitely, it's got that gated type thing for sure. Totally get it.
So I remember we knocked on this door, and the housekeeper opened the door, but like not fully. It's like creaked it open. And she's like, we're trying to talk to her, and she's like, what? And then the homeowner was on the balcony inside the house. She's like, who are you? And my friend was like, we are real estate. She's like, not interested. And like, as the housekeeper started closing the door, I just put my foot right in the door.
Wow. So the proverbial foot in the door.
Yeah, foot in the door. I'm like, wait. And I know that just came more instinctually. Like I didn't, it wasn't something I planned. It just happened.
Right.
And then I had many moments of where I would just be a little bit more aggressive in my approach and a lot more like go getter on it.
Sure.
And that started building up my confidence. I remember there's one particular moment when I was door knocking where it really built up my confidence. We were door knocking on a home. As I opened the door, as the guy opened the door, and I'm like, "Hey, my name is Moore. This is my partner, Alad. We live blah blah blah." As I'm like talking, he's just shaking his head like, "No." And he's literally starting to say, he's like, no, you are not allowed to door knock here. I'm going to have you arrested. I'm going to call the police. I'm like, well, I'm okay. I'm like, we have a list of homes. If you don't want us to door knock, we'll cross your name out. That's it. We started walking back. I'm like, see you, have a great day. We started walking to our car. He started following us and just yelling in our faces. And he's like, I'm gonna call the police. And then and then like, you go into like this like tunnel vision, like you don't even know what's happening. You're on autopilot. I'm like, call the police, do whatever you want. We have a
Yeah, just do it. Like whatever, we have everything we need. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. And my friend, at the time, my partner at the time, he was like very like he was freaking out. He's like, holy shit. And again, like the part of me just sort of showed up, and I was just like, defending myself, and I had a lot of confidence doing it. And I pulled up the solicitation permit, and the guy's like, let me see that. And he tried to pull it away, and I grabbed it from his hand. And I had this like level of like confidence, like domination, like dominating. And I remember in the moment, it felt like, whoa, like I'm proud of myself. And then long story short, they ended up getting the police. We went to the town hall, chief of police was there, town mayor was there, he was there. And long story short, like we're all like in one circle, and he was yelling at them and telling them I'm not allowed to do it. And then I was essentially defending our case of like why we are. And
well, yeah, I mean, you clearly, I mean, I would assume you went through proper process and procedure to get.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And so I remember the cop was like, he looked at us, he let him talk, he let us talk. He's like, I know you guys, like I see you guys door knocking every single day. Like you guys are hustling in the summer in the heat. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you're good. Go. Best of luck. I'll see you around.
Yeah, sounds about right. Like if you follow proper process and procedure and you're not doing anything wrong, you're gonna be okay.
And he also respected the two young guys hustle. We're wearing suits in the Miami summer. It's very hot. And the guy, and I remember I left. I wasn't a successful real estate agent at all. But long story short, and then I got a part-time job at Allstate doing cold calling to help pay the bills. So I was doing cold calling in real estate, door knocking in real estate, cold calling at Allstate. And a year later, I definitely wasn't making more money. I probably was more in debt. But what I did have was I had confidence. I had self-belief in. I was like, I can call a stranger. I have no problem. I can go door knock. I have no problem. I actually enjoy it. I enjoy cold calling. I enjoy door knocking.
Sure. Okay.
And when that happened, I was like, now I can start looking for jobs in sales.
That's what I was just going to ask. I was like, were those experiences what kind of pushed you to be like, okay, maybe I can actually do this sales thing? I was scared of it before, but now it's like I have that, like you said, a renewed sense of confidence to be like, okay, yeah. I've dealt with the adversity. I've dealt with the like really rejection.
I dealt with sales. I think my fear was like fear of judgment, whether it's judgment around like me judging myself and maybe feeling stupid, or other people around me judging me. It was a fear of judgment, and how people think of you. And so, it wasn't even like, oh, maybe I can do a good job in sales. I was so confident. I was like, I am going to. I just need to find the right. I'm good. I have the value. I just need to find the company that I can do damage there. And so it wasn't like, oh, I was like, yeah, let me get into tech sales. I wanted to do real estate. But I remember it was a year went by. I was in the office, in Keller Williams' office, and I was like pulling up an article, and I saw like Redfin bought out some like brokerage. And what they were doing was Redfin was employing full-time employees to go show property and sell property, and they would be on salary. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to be competing with agents that work at Redfin full-time. Like as a homeowner, I rather list my property or buy my property with Redfin because they have they de-risk the deal for the homeowner.
Well, yeah, I mean they have the name, credibility, and they're obviously established. So
yeah, they have people that can just show homes like soldiers. I'm like,
for sure, yeah.
I'm like, I can't compete with that. And so I looked at I was like, where am I in terms of like, am I good? Am I average? Am I above average, below average as a real estate? I'm like, I'm not even average. I'm below average. I'm like, the only way I could compete with something like Redfin or technology would be if I either was a very successful luxury real estate agent, very exclusive, or if I joined a team and I would join a team that was successful and I would eventually branch off.
I think it's good self-awareness, by the way. Just side note, good self-awareness there. And I think that's a key is like, and I think that's for people who are listening is like what you went through is like that self-reflection is super, super important. Wouldn't you agree? Like being able to understand where you fit, at least to some degree. Maybe it's not perfect, but
I'm a believer. I mean, because of my religion in Judaism, like we believe that even a lot, like whatever good or bad things happen to us, it's because God ordained it. And so we believe that even if you have like a good idea, don't take credit for your own idea, for your own good idea. It's not your idea. If someone is born tall, smart, good looking, whatever it is, and there's a lot of people that are born smart or they're born good looking, and they sort of show off about it, like as if like it was their doing. You were born that way. or people driving cars and they're driving the car and they're revving the engine and driving fast and they think they are fast. The car is fast. You're just the person behind the wheel.
Wait, are you calling people out?
I am calling people out. So the belief in Judaism is it's not your doing. You're just sort of like a vessel, and if God wants to give you if He wants to make you successful, you'll be successful. You have to put in some work.
I love that.
And so I credit the self-awareness to God gave me the capacity at that moment to have self-awareness.
Love it.
So I was like, you know what? I have a choice. Do I join? I didn't want to be a real estate agent. I wanted to go into investments, but I thought like being a real estate agent at first would eventually guide me.
I mean, it sounds about right, especially at a younger age. You're like, yeah, you see that's the flashy stuff you see on TV. It makes sense why you follow that path. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And my uncle's in it and he's successful in it. So I was like, yeah, why not? And then I was like, do I join a team or do I, as in a residential, or do I go into commercial and try to do that? Or do I maybe get into tech? Because I'm noticing tech is like, it's taking over even real estate. Maybe I should.
Yeah, and around that time, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, by the time you had done that, I mean, it's what, 2015 by this point? Around that time frame when this is happening?
Slightly before.
Maybe before, but yeah, I mean,
2015, I joined a company called Practice Panther.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, the timing does kind of make sense there because now everything's becoming more app oriented. Now things are starting to get
SaaS.
Everything's becoming software as a service. Yeah. So I think the timing made perfect sense there. Yeah. Why you were thinking that way. Okay.
So I didn't know which one was the right route. So I reached out to maybe 3 to 5 people that I trust, that I would like, I sort of admire, I look up to, I'll take their advice. And one of them wasn't already in real estate. And he's like, listen, like, you can always do commercial, you can always get back to commercial real estate, but if you're noticing a trend in something, maybe you should ride it. Like, you can always come back to real estate, but if you're noticing something new, then maybe give that a shot.
I did the same thing.
So a few people gave me that advice, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'll do that. So I stopped doing real estate, and I was like, I'm going to apply to startup jobs. I didn't know what, I just wanted to get into a startup.
Sure.
One of the companies was a company called Moovooz. That was the first startup I joined. I don't think it's on my LinkedIn. Maybe it is.
Let's see. I do. Moovooz. Yeah, it's right here. You're a business development advisor.
Yeah, that company does not exist, and it was like a 5-month stint.
Yeah, I see a 5 month. Yep, it's literally 5 months, September 2014 to.
That one was like think of like a kayak in orbit, but for moving. So if you were moving, you would pull up the app, compare different
movers based on probably localization and so. Okay, cool.
And then you would add your furniture, and it would give you a rate, and then you can just book the mover.
Cool. That sounds simple enough.
It's a pretty cool idea. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I want to join it. Blah, blah. And I like DM'd the founder on Facebook, and I was like, I need to get the job. And so I ended up getting hired, and it was just like a stupid job. Like, it was just so dumb. I was writing content. We were doing a little bit of guerrilla marketing. There was no real sales. We got some of my ideas, ended up getting them some business, but not enough to make it then.
Right.
And we only had $185,000 in funding. About 5 months later, they ran out of funding, couldn't renew. They couldn't raise. And so I was like, all right, I'm out of a job. And I joined another company called SciShot. I didn't want to join this company. I hated it, actually. But I was like, I need a job. It was an insurance. So there's an insurance company. The owner of the insurance company was very successful, likes technology, and she started a company called SciShot, which doesn't exist today. And it was an app where if you notice anything that looks suspicious or whatever it is, then you can take a photo or a video and you can upload it to the cloud. And then, law enforcement and agencies will have access to it. And
oh, wow. Okay.
So at the time, I still think, it's an interesting app, but I thought it was stupid at the time.
It'd probably be really good if I'm thinking, because I'm actually on the HOA board here in our community. That would be like a good thing for us to have in a community. Like, if you're trying to report something that's easy, I feel like that's what it's for. More of like citizen type surveillance in some degrry. Yeah.
To an extent.
Like that. Yeah.
We didn't really she spent like over $1 million in engineering development, but like, we didn't really have it. I was so new to, that was my second startup job. I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I was like, let's run a Facebook ad and see if people like it. And like, I didn't believe in I hated it. It was depressed. I was really depressed in that company. I got fired from that company. And then, but 5 months later, they closed down because nobody wanted it. And I was like, shit, what do I do now? And so that's when I joined Practice Panther. So I give you a long winded answer to how I joined the first tech startup that was successful.
Yeah, and I saw you were there for almost 5 years, and that's where I think this is where you've got some of your direction here, because eventually, for 4 years, you were the VP of sales over there.
So walk us through that. So you become an AE there.
Yeah, so I joined.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so that company was interesting. I knew the founder of that company. And I've seen him on Facebook. I knew him from my community, but I wasn't like friends. But I saw on my Facebook that he was hiring, and I went onto the website. And at the time, they had like this stupid logo. It was like a cartoonish logo of a panther. I'm like, this is so stupid. I don't want to work here. I made that judgment based off of like a logo.
Yeah,
And
pure
then
aesthetics. But it's good to hear though, because I can feel your mindset as you're doing this. Like you're
I was
like,
very
oh,
judgmental, right? Like I
of course.
judged. And then my friend's like, well, why don't you just take the job? You need a job. I'm like, I don't want to take the job just because I need a job, because then I know him from the community. And if I'm only doing it because I need the job and it's not going to be a fit, I'm going to quit like a month later. And then you ruin the name, like you ruin your.
Mhm.
He's like, I get it. And then it's like I waited, and then like I don't know what happened. Like a week later, I saw somebody else. They had somebody that posted a job again on Facebook. I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Why not? And so I went. I had 2 interviews that day. It was on a Friday. One was a sales job at like a wholesale cell phone company. The
Mhm.
other one was Practice Panther. The founder greeted me with his Samoyed dog at the entrance, and their office was like, he used to be a DJ. He had like a DJ company at the
Oh wow.
event
Okay,
center.
that's cool. That's awesome.
So their office looked like it was like a house that had, so it didn't have like this officey vibe. It had like a house vibe. And I was like, this is such a vibe. Like just the energy. He came in with shorts. The
I can tell
co-founder
you're
had
big on energy. You're big on like aura.
big.
You're big on
Yeah.
feeling. I can tell, which is probably why
Yeah.
we get along. Because I'm very much the same way. Like
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I'm very into like feng shui and like how things are set
Sure.
up, and like fluorescence kill me. I hate fluorescence.
I
And
can deal. That's fine. But I get it. Hey, to each their
but it
own.
was like a vibe, like it was like a wood floor, they had a carpet, like like just like a vibe. The dogs running around, and
It
we
was
had an
almost like a
interview.
show house to some degree, like
Yeah,
with some
it was
sit down.
cool.
Okay,
It
sure.
was very casual. I was like, I like the energy. I feel comfortable here. And then I already had somewhat experience working at 2 different companies that failed, and I knew why they failed. I knew one had no funding and no PMF, the other, or product market fit. The other one had no product market fit but had funding. So I knew that if for a startup to
Big
work,
key terms, by the way. If you don't know what those are, go look into why they're super important for a revenue perspective. If you're following
yeah.
along, continue.
So when I was interviewing here, I was like, in order for this company to be successful, I needed to know, 1, do they have funding? 2, do they have product market fit? And 3, do they have people that want to use it? Like, or do they have existing customers at all? And so I asked these 3 questions, and they had it, and they're like, we'll let you know, we really like you. Long story short, I had a great interview, it was good vibes, and I leave, and I get a phone call from the founder. He's like, hey man, we really loved you. We want you to join right away. I'm like, I'm interviewing. I just finished an interview from a different company. I'm waiting for them to give me an answer. Can I give you an answer like next week? He's like, no, we need to know now. We're going to make a decision. We have a bunch of candidates. We want you now. He created false sense of urgency, whatever. I'm like,
I mean, hey, he's in sales, homie. You get it.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm in. Count me in. I'll take the job. So I joined the job.
Lord, hook, line, sinker. Got him. But apparently it paid off, obviously.
It paid off. I was the first employee, technically the second employee. And then I became a VP of sales 6 months later at the age of 26.
Good for you.
Yeah, and that was my first like successful company that I worked at. Otherwise, everything prior to that, from 25, from the ages of 22 to 24, 25, I was a loser. Like,
Okay,
right? Like, that's how
you're
I
saying
would
it. That's fine.
classify it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's also too, like, just to kind of summarize this, because I think this is where we're going to start getting into you becoming actually like an advisor and a founder. Like I'm becoming the founder and then becoming on like
Right.
being advisor to different companies. Is I think it's almost like your experience was just shaped by so much failure that you learned almost like what not to do. And you channeled all of that experience to when you finally got the position of like, oh wow, I matter, I'm important at 26 with Practice Panther. Now you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I think that, like, would you agree? Would you disagree? Like, would you say that that was like beneficial to your kind of career success in some respects? Like having all of that adversity kind of hit you right out of the gate? Or would you say that, I guess, and I'm kind of deviating a little bit because normally I end the podcast with this, but I think this is a good moment of like kind of that adversity, because I think we can end and then we'll obviously give the advice about how you can follow the path. Is I think people are always looking for like, how do I like shape myself? How do I give myself direction? So would you say that that gave you the direction almost unintentionally? And would you change anything that happened?
Yeah, it definitely gave me unintentional direction. It wasn't like I knew that this was going to happen. I definitely believe in Hebrew we say mazal, which mazel, like luck.
Yep, mazel,
right?
Yep.
And that's luck is really, it's like being in the right place, the right time, and then seeking the opportunity.
Yep.
I don't think I think it was a mixture of that. Like I think God had a lot to do with it. But yeah, I think if I can go back and do it all over again, yeah, I would do things a lot differently.
Like what? Like what specifically? Like I said, I know I'm deviating here. But like,
knowing what I know now, right? Like having
hindsight's always 20/20. But yeah, like I guess
Right.
this is the part where I'm going to ask you, and we'll obviously continue about the founder and seeing the past. But like,
even let's say taking away not my experience, but my mindset. My mindset's different. The mindset is really important because the mindset that I had in my early 20s is what screwed me. Not my skill set. My mindset started shifting at 25, 26.
Because I would say your skill set didn't necessarily change as much. It was how you
I had the
looked
same
at it.
skill. Yeah, exactly. So let's just say I had no skills right now, but I had the exact same mindset and I had the exact same skills at 22, but I had the mindset of a 35-year-old, and I can go back in time. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have quit that first sales job.
Okay.
I would have stuck it through. I probably would have looked at a company I really wanted to work at and like maybe do it for free just for the experience, like a bigger company, right? Like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, like do an internship for free and have that logo under your belt. Or I would have I had a lot of like business ideas when I was younger, and I would spend like 2 days working on the logo and the name, and then when it actually came to actually put in the work, I was like, not for me. It's a bad idea. And it was I had a very lazy mindset, and so if I had that mindset, I probably would have stuck in a certain business, let it fail, find whatever it is. I was also very risk averse when I was younger, extremely risk averse. I'm more of a risk taker with 3 kids now than I was,
which I find fascinating. But at the same time, I get it. As someone who's growing old with a baby as well, I'm almost feeling like I kind of have to take a little bit of some like calculated risk, in order to make sure that we can succeed down the line. Yeah, I'm with you. I totally.
You don't want to look back and be like, oh man, I shouldn't have done. Like,
yep.
Being an employee for the rest of your life and then being let go at 60 or 50 years old, or competing with if you're 60 or 70 years old and you're now competing with a 20-year-old who'll take a job for cheaper, that's a really, and I know people like that very close to me. That's a really bad situation to be in. And for me, that's like, I don't want to be. So yeah, that's what I would do. I mean, I'd probably stick out more things. I'd probably take more risks. And I think, it's a mindset thing. That would have
no, that's fair. And it's the reason I asked that is, like, a lot of our community is like, they're either trying to break in or do whatever. And we try to provide a bunch of insights, and like the more technical individuals, myself included, will always say like, sink your teeth into like a specific technology. But for you, you're looking more at, if you have certain skills, people will put you in the certain positions to succeed. You just have to have the mindset to know you can achieve it, is really kind of what I'm getting from you. And I think that that's super valuable in some respect. Yeah, go ahead. I see you want to add something.
No, I was going to say, like, you also have to have a little bit of, you need to create like a little mini circle. Here's the thing, like, nobody knows what's the right decision, what's the right move. So the only way to go about things like that is to hedge your risk and then, hedge your risk. So what do? You find a circle of advisors that you look up to, that are relatively successful, that you trust, or on the way, that you can advise. That's number one. Number two, you weigh out the pros and cons, and you try to think as logically as possible. Don't make the decision based on 1 year from today. Make the decision based on 3 years from today.
Okay. I like that.
And so you need to have some self-awareness to put yourself in the right, like, right. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if you drive as a taxi cab driver, you're not going to make a ton of money, right? But if you're
going to grind a ton just to get there. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So you have to know what vehicle you should, no pun intended, but you have to know what vehicle you need to be in order to like maximize your potential. If you're in sales, you're a phenomenal salesperson, but you're selling at a candy shop, you're not going to be a millionaire. Like, you just won't, unless you own the candy shop, maybe. But so you have to know what vehicle or what vessel you should put your skills in.
It looks like you know, if I summarize this correctly, took all of your experiences, wanted to be in real estate, realized, I know there's some skills that are probably transferable to tech. You go to Practice Panther, realize that's probably the right move. And then it looks like from there, you're really working as almost a startup advisor. And I see you went all over the place, where you helped One Build, Milkshake, Door Loop, Pavilion, Humantic AI, Endeavor.
Well, Pavilion's a community. I didn't help Pavilion. Pavilion is just a community. So
okay, fair enough. But you were clearly invited to be part of that, right? And it's like, it looks like you kind of really leaned into software as a service. So I guess I'm kind of going back to the original flow of the conversation here is, what was it that told you I need to stay in software? What was it that told you I should stay in tech? Was it just that the money was good, or was it more like you actually realized that all these skills were channeling to something bigger?
No, it was more so like even till today, I have some thoughts that pop into my head. I'm like, am I in the right industry?
Yeah, you said that. You were like, I look at your experiences. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's killing it. And I remember you told me, you're like, I still have more work to do. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I
question it. Like, I'm questioning, like, am I in the right industry? Like, should I be doing something else? Like, am I in the right, like, am I supposed to be where I'm supposed? Like, technically, you could say yes if you know, like, God, like again, going back to God, like wherever you are, that's where God wants you to be. But like, do I have blind spots that I'm missing opportunities I'm not realizing because I'm just like, it's very possible. And so when you get into that thought process, you become very indecisive, and it gets to you. You have like weeks where you're just like, I'm not happy with what I'm doing because I'm not even supposed to know if I don't even know if I'm supposed to be doing this. Should I be doing something else? So so it wasn't like I should be doing this because this is how I know I'm meant to do this. It's not like that. I don't like, my brain doesn't go there. Like, I'm meant to do SaaS sales. Like, I don't. There are some people like Mr. Beast. I'm meant to do YouTube videos, right? Like,
I mean, not for nothing. I mean, he is pretty damn good at them. Like, I mean, he charges an arm and a leg for just even advertising, which is kind of incredible because he can.
Because he can, yeah. But like he knew at a very, I believe if someone finds their passion at a very, if somebody finds their passion, whatever passion is, at whatever age they find it, I believe that's a real blessing. So
I agree with you. Yeah, because yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, to me, like, my passion was always like, it really kind of solidified with me kind of a little early in my 20s, and it did help that I did get married at a younger age. My wife and I, we've been together since we were 19 years old. I met her when I was 17, so we were able to kind of grow up together, and I knew my passion was just helping people. But if you told me that I was going to be a good sales engineer at a robotic process automation software company, I would have been like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's insane. Like, I align with you to some degree, but I would say you probably have a passion, much like myself, to put yourself in the best position to help people. No?
I like to help people, but wouldn't, if that's my passion, I would have been like a doctor or something.
I see what you're saying. Like, you, like, in your head, you're still kind of like, I get where your mindset's at, to me, where it's like, you had said the blind spots and so on and so forth. And it's really like, you're just trying to make sure that, one, you're obviously putting your best foot forward because you have a family now and you obviously want to take care of them. I'm pretty sure that's probably number one on your list. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So
and love what I do, because if I'm miserable doing something and have to support a family, that's a very depressing life.
I mean, yeah, you quit your job after 3 hours. So like, I mean, we totally get like, your mindset will be like, hey, right. And it's very interesting. And I think this is a really good kind of self-reflective moment for everyone to kind of see that even individuals on paper who are super, super successful, and that you are, don't lie, you are, but
I don't think I am. I definitely don't think I'm.
Right. See, and to me, I find that wild because I would argue the masses would disagree with you, but I think it's a good disagreement to have, in the sense that this is reflective to know that other people are probably struggling just like you are and still continue to do. And I think it's actually good for them to see that it's okay. Because I think that not everyone is able, just like you said, people do sometimes find their passion. Sometimes they're the savants from a music perspective. Sometimes they're savants in sports. Sometimes they're just these people who are just these super awesome, stellar salespeople. Like, I know you see Brian Lamana a lot, like from Gong. Like, he's probably one of those kids who was like that. You know what I mean? Like, but to that point, not everyone has that, right? I feel like a lot of us are just kind of like in a good position at a time, and we do the best that we can until we figure out what it is. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of depressing, honestly.
It is, but it's also too, like, but that's just I think that's just the reality of the world that we live in, and I think that that's something that I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know, like, I know our parents' generation always told us, like, hey, you can do whatever you want, but that was a load of crap,
right? So it's more like I'll say that candidly, not for everyone,
but I would say the vast majority of that, and I think it's something. I know it's depressing, but it's either we can be the change or we can find a way to operate within the confines. And I'd rather do the latter, personally.
Yeah. I mean, so that's why I believe in, I think that's why I'm more of a risk taker now. That's part of the reason, besides having a family. It's at least for me, like a very depressing thought is to live life as an average person, just like be average at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And some people define success as like family. Yeah, I think I'm successful on the family front, right? Like, I got married, I have kids, and we're happy, we're good, and I'm great relationship with the in-laws, my parents, great. I'm successful there. At least for a man, I think I can speak for myself. Men generally, their identities are very much tied to their careers. And so if you have an average
I'd say that's
career,
still true today. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have like an average job, an average career, average money, then because it's tied to your identity, then you think of yourself as average.
Yeah, but like I think there's my wife and I like to always go back and forth about this, where sometimes she'll call me arrogant. I'm like, no, I'm confident about things that I know I can be confident about, but I'm not going to be the person who's going to be arrogant about something just because I want to seem like I'm smarter than I'm not.
Yeah.
And I think that's so I wouldn't consider that ego. Also, too, not for nothing. Like I even said this in like my vows, and now we're getting like really deep, but I kind of like that in the sense that like I even told in my vows when I was getting married, the first thing you should always do is love yourself first. Like you have to be selfish to some degree, because if you're not, it's your life. And what are you going to do? Are you going to go through your whole life and regret decisions you didn't make because you were trying to cater to someone else? Nah, I think you quintessentially have to love yourself for your flaws. And then I think that's when you can actually commit yourself to something else. And I would say that it works probably more romantically and emotionally, but I would also argue that art works professionally, because you're living proof of it. Like you were never going to put yourself in a position where you were going to feel against the grain. Like you always wanted to make sure it was a good fit, right? And I would argue the same works with any relationship, regardless whether it's personal or professional. Would you agree? Would you disagree? I mean,
yeah, I mean, to an extent, right? So like,
of course, yeah.
Sometimes things that are really, really good for you tend to be really hard at first. I'll give you an example. I'll give you two examples. Well, let me give you one example, and then you said something about like being selfish first. When you take a flight somewhere and they do this, that flight attendant does like this whole demonstration of like what happens if the plane crashes or whatever it is. What's the first thing they say? If you have a child, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, aka be selfish. This way you can actually help the child. So it works in flights, it works everywhere. You have to be able to take care of yourself in order to take care of somebody else. Going back to going against the grain and all that, or things that are hard at first. When I was in college, I remember we had Rate My Professor. I don't know if they still have it. Rate My Professor.
Yeah, I remember we used it. Yep, definitely used it. I still use it. Yeah, I graduated 2015, so yeah, I loved it.
Greatest website in the world. And so
some of those were great. You had like the hot ratings and stuff too, where like if you had like an attractive teacher, just hilarious stuff.
I loved it. So I remember I had to take an accounting class, and I went to FIU, Florida International University. It wasn't like wow. So I went there because it was just like the easy way to get in. Yeah. And I took an accounting class, and I went on Rate My Professor, and I saw you can register for which professor you want on the website. And then I was like, I looked up all the professors I can choose from FIU's like list of professors for accounting for the semester. And I went on Rate My Professor. I saw one, I forgot his name. Wow, but he got like the best stars, the best. Maybe one star wasn't good.
Like like what, 4.85 stars, crazy, something like that. Yeah.
I read the reviews. I went into the reviews, and people were saying like, "This is the best professor," but everyone had a warning. In the first few weeks, he's going to be the worst professor ever, and he does it to weed out the bad students. But
I love that.
And when you join the class, you will see, and it will scare you. Some people, even after reading this, will believe it. They join the class and they leave the class because it's not for them.
And this was an accounting course.
Accounting class, yeah.
Which one was it? Was it like the 101 or the 201?
I think like the 101. It was like
101. Okay, yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, because I was a business kid, so that's why I was just like, which one? Yeah, because I went through them. Yeah.
So I joined first day semester, and then like clockwork, the professor just like was an asshole. Like,
sure,
just call people out and like. I was like, holy shit.
Right, like, he's just berating a bunch of like college kids. I know this. I know this professor already.
He's like, this class is gonna be the hardest. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I remember the reviews. I'm like, oh no, I'm good. Like this was expected. I'm okay. And I see some people probably didn't read the reviews and they're freaking out. Day 2, day 3, next week, half the class left. Mm-hmm. And he's like, all right, well now since the half the class left, let me show you how it's gonna be. And it was one of the best classes I've taken ever, not only in accounting, but just like ever, because the professor taught us a lot of life lessons. He was really awesome, really, really awesome professor, really empathetic. Our final exam, we all prepped for our final exam. We get into class. He's like, the final exam today there is no final exam. The final exam is the lesson I'm going to teach you guys. He goes, the only thing you have in this world is your name. That's your reputation. Never ruin it. That's and we're like, and I remember this professor was awesome. And so giving the reason why I'm giving that story is because a lot of things that are really, really great end up actually starting hard. And a lot of things that are really, really not good end up looking easy at first and then end up being hard.
That's really, really insightful. And I think all of us kind of understand that to some degree. Like, people always say good things that happen to those who wait, be patient, so on and so forth. But that is a real life example. And you got that really, really early on. So so I guess this is a really good spin because obviously, I want to be respectful of your time. We've been running really long and I love the convo and I love the spin we've taken. Would you say that experience has helped you shape to understand? And would you say that level of because you had talked about it, having mindset, having the discipline to understand where can you fit, like making sure that your mindset is going to say, I'm going to be confident about this. I'm going to work at it. I'm going to put myself in the best light. Would you say that class, that mindset shift is now I guess really the X factor to being kind of a software as a sales coach? Or do you think it's more like,
no, I think
no. Okay.
I think there's no one thing for me. At least I think
Fair.
everyone, at least for me, it's
your perspective, man. That's what I'm asking for. Just your perspective.
Yeah. I think there are micro moments that stick with you, and then like those sort of build on top of each other, and then you have some sort of like Frankenstein mindset that's built on the backs of like a bunch of experiences. That was one. That was definitely one. Like when I was younger, I also every time I had a business idea, I would start it, but then I'd flake out because it was too like I had to do work, and I was like, I don't like that side of me. And I felt it was a pattern. I did it very often. I did it with work. I did it with starting a business, and I flaked out. And so when I went on my own about 19 months ago, or 20 months ago, for my consulting and coaching and advisory business, I had that moment where I was like, oh, it's getting too hard. What do I do? Do I leave? And I remember I had like this, like, I was teetering, like, and I was like, this is exactly what I've been doing my entire life, where I would like get to this point and then I'd quit. And so I just went full for. I was like, I'm not listening to myself. I'm almost ignoring myself. I'm just gonna go full throttle.
Okay. Would you argue that was, I mean, obviously I'd say that paid off. I mean, business has got to be booming, right? Like, I feel like you've got to be, I mean,
not yet. No,
not yet. I don't know. I just see a lot of testimonials and I feel like, and I have to say this candidly, like your presence on LinkedIn, truthfully, is so admirable. And this is what we never really discussed, and that's okay. Like, full transparency, I've loved Moore's posts ever since I first connected with this dude. Like, he looks at selling the same way that I do. It's not about selling your product and service and fitting it into whatever use case is presented to you. It's about knowing your product and solution and making sure that you can actually solve the business problem. Sounds the same, but it's a completely different lens. And you seem to emulate that to like the T. And I think it goes against a little bit of that traditional selling mantra, which is, kind of land and expand, throw stuff at the wall, like get it to work. And it almost looks like, and I feel like this is kind of a piece of advice. And you tell me if this is a good piece of advice as a leave behind for anyone, especially if someone's trying to get more into tech sales. Would you agree learning how a product or service can solve a problem is more important than figuring out how to find buzzwords and fit it to a use case? Yes or
no? Yeah, obviously.
No, but here's the thing though, is like, I don't know if that's actually obvious to everyone, right? And that's what I'm saying is, like the whole precipice of this whole entire thing is people are trying to break into that. When I tell people you want to be an effective sales engineer, you have to know how to demo that product unconsciously. And people are like, what do you mean? That just makes you like a demo jock. And I go, no, because when you learn that, you learn how it's actually implemented in the market. And then when you learn how it's implemented in the market, you can start actually solutioning as an approach. Would you argue, or would you agree that that's kind of what you learned as you've gone through this whole entire process, and you've been able to adapt based on obviously different stats, like companies, because you're obviously coaching different companies. It's not just one. I mean, you can take your coaching mechanism and tailor it based on what it is, but would you argue like that's kind of what you figured out and that's what you would kind of advise people? Or
it's pretty simplistic if you break it down, right? Like sales in general, if we're doing SaaS sales, tech sales, it's pretty simplistic. But it's almost like the simple things are hard to do because people overlook it because it just seems too obvious. Like, it has to be more complex than that. So they look for something else, but it really isn't. The way to properly demo or sell or whatever it is, or like show value of your product, is you need to find sometimes there isn't pain, but you need to find out either what is the pain of the prospect or what is their goal, or sometimes it's both. And this is sort of like the lesson in copywriting. Also, when you're writing copy, you have to figure out like what's the pain, what's the goal. Then you need to find out, well, how big is that pain, or how large is that goal? Like how motivated are they to solve that pain or achieve that goal? And then there's more to it, but at a high level, that's what you need. Now, everything that you show them or you talk about has to be the nucleus, the core, the sun is the pain of the prospect or the goal, and everything around it that's the solar system of your sales techniques, whatever you want to call it, everything that's orbiting the pain and the goals is whatever it is that you want to show them. So whenever you're showing them a feature, you're not showing them a feature, you're showing them an answer to a problem that they have. So practically speaking, hey, you mentioned you're having XYZ problem. What I'm about to show you will help you solve XYZ problem. It's really that simple.
Which, yep. No, I was just going to chime in there. It's like, and that right there sometimes turns sellers off because they're like, we're not building a bigger size. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're adhering to what you can do to build. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You're building that trust out front and becoming that trusted advisor. So that way you can obviously get the deal size later on, or at minimum, you know that your product is going to solve the specific use case that you have and you're still fine. Because I sometimes run into that where like, I will literally, when I'm in, I mean, I've been doing this since I've started at UiPath, and I don't care who the hell hears this. I have always said, what's your use case? I'm going to show you exactly how we solve it using our software. And I leave it at that. And people are like, why aren't you trying for more? I'm like, because they'll come later. They will come back with problems. They will come back with, what do I do here? And now I have that relationship, and now I'm not selling. Now I'm advising. Is that kind of your approach?
Even more so now in this economy where most companies are trying to de-risk their deals as much as possible, and so they're trying to spend less but get more out of it, or get a minimum viable value, I guess. And so it's this land and expand approach also. I mean, right? Like,
that's what it is. Yeah, but it's more bottoms up. I would agree. No,
it definitely is more bottoms up. Right? Find the problem, show them the solution, and then. I think old school. I think nowadays, since buyers have just access to a ton of resources and
dude, information's free nowadays, man. It's like you can Google a lot of stuff and get 90% of what you need.
Yeah. Overselling them on something that they don't need is not going to work anymore. I don't think. Maybe in an uneducated buyer. I think if you're still selling antiquated business,
it'll still work to some degree. You're still going to get some big deals as a result, but it's like, that's why, and like I said, that's back to the original prime and why I wanted to talk to you is like, you have the same mindset I do. Is I'm looking at make a champion, find a way to upskill someone, even at the organization you're trying to sell into. Because once you do that, then all of a sudden now you've got an entry point, which first off, if you're always looking for lead generation, you've got someone that's there. But more importantly, that's the person who's probably going to help you actually push the needle, even if they don't have any quote unquote buying power, because they know the ins and outs. They know what the actual solution needs to do. They know what the user experience needs to be like. And I feel like sometimes we miss that. And I think we miss that because, and that's why I advocate, I'm breaking into tech. Getting more technical means how does your solution actually solve the problem? Not what you hear from buzzwords and being like, oh, it solves this because of X. Can you actually show them how? And every time I read your post, it's like I see that every single time. I'm like, wow, it's just more you're looking at it from the sales lens, not the actual sales.
Yeah, and I don't even like that. For anyone listening, I guess when you're like bringing it to tech and like you're thinking about using buzzwords, I wouldn't use buzzwords. What I would use is the words that your prospect use. If you're talking to a prospect and they're saying like they're looking at a solution like yours because they're bleeding money, and that's the words that they choose to use, bleeding money. Then your buzzword is now should be bleeding money.
Bleeding money, yeah.
You want to quote them. You want to sound like them. You want to talk their language. Think of it like, I'll tell you, like I'm Israeli. I was born in Israel, and so if I'm like, I don't know, traveling anywhere, I'm going anywhere, and I see someone on the streets and I hear them, they like, I don't know, if I'm going to a restaurant, whatever it is, and I talk to somebody and they're like, they respond and I pick up on their accent, and I'm like, oh, you're Israeli, like, yeah, and then we start speaking in Hebrew. I'm like, we're part of the tribe. We're talking the same language, and then immediately there's trust. And so that's a non-sales environment. But so you could take most of the advice I apply in sales come from a non-sales environment. That exact example. So when I go into sales, in a sales like environment where prospect is saying some word, I'm going to now use the words that they're using. So now we can be part of the same tribe.
Yeah, no, and I think I remember hearing this at one of the jobs I had. His name was Mark Davison. He was the partner of ISG. It was the company who pulled me to do implementations for the first time at RPA. He said, you need to be shooting for the diamond standard, not the gold standard. We're like, what is that, Mark? And he said, it's exactly what you're saying. Treat them how they want to be treated, not treat how you want to be treated. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You pick up on those things. And yeah, you might be taking a little bit of a risk. You might be making an assumption, right? But I do the same thing like with Spanish folks, right? Like I don't know Spanish very well, but I know enough conversational to be able to use Spanglish. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, right? And most people who are of Latin descent are usually bilingual. That's just an American byproduct of education. But I digress. But I like to do that because it does break down that level of barrier to entry. And just like you're talking about, now it almost like I can emulate, I can sympathize. Like whenever we go to Mexican restaurants, I try to order in Spanish and then they communicate with me that way. And I like doing that because I think it breaks it down, and they're usually nicer, they give us better service. But I'm not doing it because of that. I'm doing it because I want to make that feel relatable in a world where they may not necessarily feel as relatable.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also there are prospects that buyers that don't want to do something, and so I'll give you an example. Like I'm coaching a particular consulting a client right now. They have a sales rep, and I was listening to a call recording, and the prospect's like, "Oh, we're evaluating other softwares, but I'm glad we're able to connect. All right, I'll be in touch if I have any questions." She goes, "Okay, great." Like that is exactly what the prospect wants. They don't want you to push back. They want you to be like easy to deal with.
Mhm.
But that is what I call an order taker, where you're just there to answer questions, and then part of being a salesperson is pushing and challenging and making the prospect do something that they don't want to do, but they need to do in order to benefit themselves, not in order to benefit you. It's like my dad waking me up when I was in my 20s, like, get up, you can't stay in bed, don't sleep till noon. I didn't want to do that, but he did it
But
because
for your best interest, you did it.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's the same thing with sales.
Yeah, no, and even in that scenario, right? Like, I mean, we look at it, right? Where, an RPA vendor, and there's multiple RPA vendors and multiple solutions that kind of achieve the same automation purpose. And when I hear I'm exploring other vendors, I use that. If I didn't get it out in discovery before, I say, what are you looking to explore specifically? Because I'll even say flat out, I'm like, we're the most expensive you're going to find. So already I've already told them, hey, I know what your first objection is going to be. But then I'm sitting here saying, what are you exploring? What are you looking for specifically? And then you find a lot of times they're really just looking for someone to partner that's actually to give them the proper solution. So it's not even selling ours, because then if you immediately go into that thinking, oh, I have to make sure I show exactly what the other vendor can't do, that's like almost the afterthought. I'm looking at it from exactly you're saying. I mean, is that something that you would suggest people kind of do? I mean, I guess I'm looking at this and kind of summarizing this because obviously, I do need to let you go at some point, right? But to that point, I'm kind of summarizing. Would you say, if you're going to get into sales specifically in the technology space, would you say that's the advice you would give? Is try to really, really, and I know it sounds so intuitive, but like there's a difference between reading what they have on a 10K and building a company profile versus actually understanding the pain that an organization's going through. So would you say that's the advice, I guess, really in anything, relationship building, tech sales, etc.? Learn your prospects' pain, build a relationship with them before you even try to pitch anything. And I know that sounds so intuitive, but I don't think people actually get how to do that. Would you argue that that's kind of where, that's where your success has been, obviously your coaching mechanism? Or I'm just going to say, because this is also a learning moment for me too, right? Like,
Well, I've never read a 10K. I've never dealt with deals for that.
See, like that's good to hear. That's good to hear. You've never read one. Why?
I never dealt with sales deals that are that large where I'd have to read a 10K.
Okay, fair enough.
I just wasn't that selling environment. You're probably doing like high enterprise deals, like strategic.
I've done enterprise deals before. Yeah, I was an enterprise seller for a while, and now I've moved back into more the SMB space. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done SMB mid market, and I say enterprise, but I don't mean enterprise where the company's public and there's a 10K or the deal is like a $500,000 deal. Enterprise for some companies could be like, I don't know, longer sales cycle on the most expensive plan. Or I technically do enterprise now for my business, right? My deal size for B2B service, like when I do consulting, starts at like 10K per month.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Yeah, that would be yeah. That's actually funny. Yeah. But
yeah, I don't read 10K. I've never read a 10K. So I'd be
so clearly, but that's what I mean is like you can find a bunch of information from like how much revenue they make and try to build a profile, but it
depends on the context. Is this referring to like if you're prospecting? Or
I guess I'm trying to generalize it as much as possible, because there's going to be some people who are in the selling motion, some people who are not in the selling motion. Some people are going to be clueless to a lot of the stuff we've talked about. So kind of a general guidance and advice. Yeah. And I think the
general guidance and advice, if you're breaking into tech, or if you're not in tech and you just want to
get we'll end with this.
Sales. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I use this hashtag a lot, and my banner on LinkedIn has it says "Help me, don't sell me," and it sounds very like obvious, but it helps. I remember I'll give you a story. When I was a waiter, my shift was over, and like next week I'd go to dinner or breakfast or lunch with my buddies, and I would sit as a customer, not as a waiter. But when the waiter came over, I saw I experienced things from the lens of a customer, not from the lens of a waiter. I had a different perspective. And it's like that. There's like a picture. It's like a cartoon. It's like the number 9 on the floor, and you have 2 people on opposite sides of it.
One's
and
a 9, one's a 6.
One's a 9, one's a 6. Yeah. So when you're a waiter, it's 9. When you're a customer, it's a 6. And so if you're never taking time to view the buying process as a buyer, then you're only going to see it as 9. You're going to have just one side perspective. So what I'd like to do is I like to get on demos and be a prospect. I try to do
And
this,
you like to call out when demos suck. You do like to do that. You do that
Yeah.
very often. Yeah, like, and you always have a reason why. Always have a reason, which is great.
And it could also just be like, doesn't have to be a demo. It could be like just like a discovery call or a sales call, or like just if I'm like about to evaluate something on a website, like I'll go through the and I'll sort of be self-reflective of what do I not like about this motion. And so what I've come to realize as a customer is I hate being sold to. When I have a problem and I really want to solve that problem, I don't want to be sold to, because then I feel like you're not actually helping me. You're just trying to sell me, and you're trying to make me get money from me, and I'm going to be left with that same problem, and I'm going to be screwed because I'm going to be in debt, whatever it is. And I was like, I want to be helped. Like I want to feel like I'm being helped. I want you to not pitch me anything. I want you to tell me, hey, listen, if you're evaluating this competitor, that's a great competitor because of X, Y, and Z. I want you to have a very like neutral opinion about what you can do for me, and what like the problem is when salespeople come in and they pitch their product, it's not neutral. It's very biased. They're very like, oh well, this is great because of blank. When you come in, you should present all options on the table and present the pros and cons. So I use this term like unsell me, or you should unsell. Help the prospect unsell them. So when you're talking on the call and they're evaluating a competitor that you know is more cheap than you, then the way to unsell or help them, you could say something like, hey, prospect, if the number one priority for you is to save the most money per month, or the most money per year, then this competitor that you're evaluating right now against us, they're going to win 10 out of 10 times. That's something a seller wouldn't do typically, because it's like, why would you even?
It goes again. You're like, why would you shoot yourself in the foot? I agree with you, though. I totally agree with you.
But as a buyer, the buyers want to hear, they want to know that. They want to help. They want to make a smart decision, and they're relying on you for it. That's why sales reps have a bad rep, because, no pun intended, because they push their agenda, which is not, it's not good. So my advice is, don't try to go in and sell the prospect, just help them, which means if they're evaluating a competitor, tell them what's good about the competitor. If they're evaluating your 3 different plans and you want them to go on the highest plan, but what they really need is the middle plan, and they have no value on the highest plan, it's really not going to do anything for them. Don't pitch the highest plan. Pitch the middle plan. And what that does, they're like, yeah, what about commission? What that does is it earns your trust. It earns trust for the prospect. That prospect becomes a raving fan, a very happy customer. When they're a happy customer, you can now use them as a resource for referrals. You have a good reputation with that prospect. That's a lead source that you can leverage. On the flip side, if a prospect comes in and thinks that they need the lowest plan because it's the cheapest plan, but based on you diagnosing their problems, you realize that they actually need the highest plan, because that's the thing that's going to really solve the problem, you're obligated to push them on the highest plan. It works in the same way. If you're helping them, you're going to help them pick the right plan that's low in maybe some cases, or the high plan in some cases, because it solves a problem.
And they're gonna want to listen, because you've spent the time to try and actually understand it from their lens. So if you push it, even if they say not in the budget, now you can have a conversation and be like, well, how do we get in the budget? Or, okay,
totally fine. Let's take the low and make sure they're successful with that, and then see when they need the
help later on, right? Like, I mean, all you're
or walking away from the deal, right? Like I've had prospects that come to me like, we need a sales playbook built out. I'm like, oh, what do you need? They're like, we need email script, we need call script, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, do you want coach? Like, no, we just need an email script. Oh, we need a playbook. I'm like, well, I can build you a playbook. I can charge you X dollars, but it's going to be a very generic playbook. That's not going to be what you needed to do. So the only way I can build you a playbook is if I start coaching you, listening to calls, and that's going to be a little bit more of a premium cost, because I'm putting in more time. Like, no, that's not what we need. I'm like, then I can't help you.
Yeah. Or you could, but what and that's where I think that's a good thing to end on, is like being very candid and transparent and real and helpful to people. You don't want to do the work because someone told you to do it. You want to do it because you know it's going to be beneficial for you and them, which I think is key. No?
Yeah,
I mean,
that, and I'm not looking just to get paid. I'm trying to actually solve a problem for them, because if I do a good, because if I just I could have just closed that deal and do whatever they wanted.
Sure. Yeah. Take the ARR call today. Sure. Yeah.
But they wouldn't have seen results, and not good ones, and they would have been like, more is not good. I rather them come to me when they are ready, and they're like if they have a bad experience, I'm never going to work with them again. So
right. Yeah. You completely burn that bridge. Exactly.
So I don't want to burn the bridge for a few $1,000s.
More, I think we could probably go forever. I have a feeling there's going to be numerous conversations, probably more through the DMs or anytime I find myself in Miami or you here in Charlotte. But I just wanted to say thank you. Seriously, I think this was, regardless of how you feel, I think this conversation is going to be very, very beneficial for people to see. Seeing someone who has worked through all the adversity that others are probably going through, working the odd jobs, getting to a final point, finding the lens. And what you did is, what you described as software sales to a T. You're right. I think it's super simplistic. Learn your solution, learn how it solves the problem, figure out where the problems are, and then just be able to adapt right there. I think that's all software sales is. That's why I've been successful in it. I was the same way. I would have never believed I was going to be in sales. Yeah, my dad did life insurance sales, but I never would have believed I'd be sitting here behind a mic talking to other people who are in this space, right? Because I get it. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time.
You bet.
I think this was awesome. I think it was great. Was it reflective for you? I want to say, was it, just like
I don't talk much about like my back in my 20s, because most podcasts are more about like the present day, but I like going back, because one day I want to start a podcast that's called like that. Forget what it's called, but it's focused on the struggle and right before the success. I don't really care about the success part of the story, because like once you're successful, that's it. Like
that's why I didn't want to focus on it. I wanted to go backwards and see how you got there. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I like talking about the struggles, because I think it's. I still deal with it today. I have 3 kids. It's not so easy to run a business and manage a family.
Yeah, no way. I mean, I literally, no joke, like my wife went to a bachelorette party last weekend and I was home with the kid myself. I do not know for the life of me how people raise children and run jobs or do whatever on their own. They are super
like single parents.
Single parents. Oh my! It was unbelievable.
So much.
There was no way. There was no. I completely agree. And just to your point, like I think dealing with that, because not everything is as flashy, right? People can always present exactly what they want on a social medium, but seeing the back is really what I wanted. So if you're going for it, dude, I say do it. I think really hearing people's stories and hearing what their mindset is key. So I'm glad you opened up and shared that with us for real. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. Otherwise, man, this has been more with From Demo to Close. Can people find you on LinkedIn and connect with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. If you're curious to learn more, go to demotoclose.com. That's about it.
Yeah, that's it. This has been more. I am KJ with KJ's Corner. More, thank you once again. And until next time, friends, this has been the I'm Breaking Into Tech podcast series, KJ's Corner specifically, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace, guys.